I think so. Okay. All right, welcome back. It's another Thursday evening. We have a total of a lucky 13 people who have joined us this Thursday evening, so welcome. We are continuing our look into the awakening of faith, and as part of that, we are in the chapter that's discussing meditation. So tonight we're going to continue sort of where we left off last week. We're going to continue to talk about meditation practice, and tonight I want to cover some of the obstacles that may come up in meditation and why the awakening of faith recommends study and other types of practice before you get to meditation. And then of course we're going to do meditation. So tonight will be something along the lines of all the reasons you should not practice meditation, and then we'll practice meditation, and I'll warn you again, and as the text does, about some of the obstacles in meditation, and then I think we'll have some chance to talk about it. So before we start, are there any questions from last week? And I apologize, camera's up here, but when I look down at the screen for any chats or anything, everyone is down here. So I will try to remember which way to look as we're doing this evening. No questions? Okay, all right. So if you're following along on the PDF of the Awakening of Faith, I believe it's page 75. I actually have the print copy, so I'm going to read from that one this evening. And if I can find the spot. Yeah. If you happen to have the print copy, I think it's page 97 we're going to pick up. But we're going to jump around a little bit, and I'll try to orient us to the page, or at least give you time to catch up. And the reason for that is I think it'll make a little bit more sense when we're talking about practice and the meditation practice we've been doing, the Sokokan, the vocalization meditation, and then how that relates to the information that's in the Awakening of Faith, kind of where we are. So we went over the vocalization, Sokokan meditation last week. I introduced it. So this week we're going to go a little step deeper into the instructions for that practice. So what I want to do is just kind of let you dip your toe in and then slowly work our way into the practice. So one of the reasons why Sokokan is a good practice to start with, there's a little bit more, what can we say, something to focus on. So if you were to, for example, practice Zen, there would be primarily silent sitting. In Sokokan, you're actually using your voice for a period in the meditation, and it sometimes helps as a way to do a single pointed focus type of meditation. So rather than not giving the practitioner something to work on, there is something to focus on. Of course, if you're used to doing a different type of meditation, this may be different. But if you're new to meditation, or if you've struggled with meditation in the past, this may be more useful. That said, this part of the text does talk about some of the obstacles. So I do want to take that portion of the text fairly seriously and give you some examples of how that may come up. And if you have questions, please don't hesitate to ask, and we can discuss those. So where we left off, we're in the practice of cessation, and it's about the third paragraph down. It starts off with next, as a result of this samadhi, so that's in the PDF is page 75. So next, as a result of this samadhi, a man realizes the oneness of the world of reality, the Dharma Dhatu, i.e. the sameness everywhere and non-duality of the Dharmakaya, of all the Buddhas and the bodies of sentient beings. This is called the samadhi of one movement. It should be understood that the samadhi of suchness is the foundation of all other samadhi. If a man keeps practicing it, then he will gradually be able to develop countless other kinds of samadhi. So I want to pause there, and of course, just first, as I usually do, recognize that translators may choose different terms. So in fact, in the Chinese, there's no gender pronoun, first of all. And then also there is several usages of terms here that are roughly the same, but differ throughout the paragraph. So as a result of this samadhi, so in this case, samadhi is being used as a result of this type of meditation. And by that, not just meaning meditation practice, that you sat down and folded your legs and closed your eyes, but that you've actually entered the meditative state. So you've actually entered samadhi. So your mind is not jumping around like a super ball. You're in that state of focus. You have reached a point where the mind is calm. So this is discussing the individual who's actually achieved some fruits from meditation practice. So they're discussing already, several steps down the path from where we may be. So that's the first part. So the person, I will say, realizes the oneness of the world of reality, meaning the Dharma Dhatu. So there's the first part that I want to pause and just define what we're talking about when we say Dharma Dhatu. And this is going to be relevant to Sokugan meditation, because the concept is very similar. So although the Awakening of Faith is discussing meditation in general, this type or this, this realization, this practice, this purpose for meditation practice is going to be the same throughout many different Buddhist traditions. So whatever method you choose, whatever school or lineage you're practicing in, that's less relevant than the purpose. And I mean this not only within different schools of Buddhism, but even different types of meditation practice. So you may achieve samadhi with a variety of different meditation practices, be they Hindu or Buddhist or anything else. So you may achieve this sort of calm abiding. You may have this state where the mind is quelled, right? You feel very much at ease. The mind is in a deep state of meditation. That can be achieved through different techniques, through different lineages. It's not something that Buddhism is copyrighted. It's something that Buddhism has said this is a good thing to do. But here's where we get into what differs about this state. And what differs is realizing the oneness of the world of reality. What it says is the Dharma Dhatu. So what is the Dharma Dhatu? This is experiencing the human world as is governed by the law of cause and effect, right? So you're being able to see the world as it really is, not the world of illusions, not the world of judgments that we place on the world, not our emotional response to the world. You're able to just see very clearly how things are, right? Without judgment, without predispositions about it. You just see the functioning. So we might say, I hesitate to use a Matrix movie, reference here, but you maybe you're seeing the code without seeing, what's beyond it. You're just visualizing it, or you see the machinery humming along, for a large factory without being attached to what's being produced by the factory. You're able to see all of it. So it's a much broader view of things. So this is part of what is being cultivated in meditation, especially Buddhist meditation practice, because we are practicing to see ourselves in the world, practicing to see one another, practicing to see, the person sitting next to us in meditation as equal, right? We're not making distinctions. We're not saying, well, I like the person to the right of me, but not to the left. Or I know the person in the back of me, breathes too heavy and it's bothering me in my meditation, and that's the problem. And then we just see this interconnectedness of things. So the Dharma Dhatu here is, on one hand, referring to that, right? We move beyond a sense of separation. We feel a connected oneness with things. The other sense of Dharma Dhatu here is referring to the underlying principle of reality, right? What is the origin and cessation of phenomena? Right? What is this general principle that the world, runs on, is connected with, right? What are we trying to gain insight into? This might be one way to think of it. It's the manifestation of the Buddhist teaching in practice, right? So when we take it off the page, we're applying it in our life. We are trying to see in this way. So one of the, if you remember earlier in our insight, our looking into the awakening of faith, one of the things that the awakening of faith discussed was what differentiates a Buddha from a Bodhisattva from us. And one of the, as an example, one of the skills that a Buddha has is being able to see all of the karmic threads connecting things together. So they're able to see exactly how things are going to play out and understand exactly why things have come to be. So part of this samadhi of the Dharma Dhatu, this insight, is gaining insight, right? We're starting to see things more clearly, separate from how we want them to be manifest, but actually start to look into them as how they are actually playing out. So this is sort of a deeper level of meditation. What we may be working on tonight is just de-stressing, just beginning to feel what it's like to calm the mind, what it is to start to let go of all the things we've attached to throughout the day, busy day, all the things that we have on our mind. All those things may be the first step that we're working on. But ultimately, what this meditation is leading us to is this deep insight. This is, what is it here? It should be understood that the samadhi of suchness is the foundation of all other samadhi. There are, within the Buddhist teaching, different types of deeper meditation, meditative insight that are discussed. So a samadhi, a particular type of meditation. So for example, in the Shingon tradition, Fudo is described as existing in a samadhi where maybe the power of his samadhi burns off his impurity. So that's why he's shown surrounded by fire. Or Kannon has a deep samadhi of compassion, right, where the compassion is overflowing. So this samadhi can manifest differently, or you may practice a particular type of deep meditative absorption which has a particular perspective. The one that's being discussed here is seeing everything, right, as equal, seeing everything as interconnected, not making distinctions between things. Right? So this is one of the basic initial types of samadhi that we want to practice. This is important because without this, it's hard to develop compassion. Without this, it's hard to distinguish between the action and the actor. So we see someone doing something that we really disapprove of, that we recognize causes significant harm. And it may be a challenge for us to not label that as hatred or disgust or something like this. So one of the practices for that would be to try to separate the action the person is doing from the person doing the action, and try to develop more insight into what they experience that have led them to make these choices, so that we can develop compassion for the person. We can still say this action is horrible, this action is heinous, this action is reprehensible, but we don't attach those emotions of hatred, disgust, or revulsion to the person. If we do that, then we can develop compassion. If we do that, if a bodhisattva was acting from that perspective, they wouldn't be able to have compassion to try to save that person. But they can definitely separate, right, the action and the result, right, the resulting harm from the individual. And then you can imagine from the perspective of Buddha, they can say, I can see because these things that happened to you in the past, that's why you're doing this now, and it's manifesting in this way. So this samadhi is trying to help us see that interconnectedness. So there's a couple ways you can practice this, and the way Shingon particularly often encourages this to be practiced is to see the interconnectedness of things. And by understanding our connection to things, we start to more organically break down our differences rather than focus on, go right away to the difficult situation and try to separate the person from their actions if they've done something that's hurt us, very deeply. That's going to take time to work on. But if you can develop compassion, if you can develop awareness of our interconnectivity over here, then sort of naturally it will permeate over into the difficult areas of life. It will permeate over into something that you might have a lot of difficulty with, and then you may one day realize, that's that big thing, that boulder of pain in my life isn't so heavy any longer. That dark space that I don't like to go to suddenly isn't so dark. But it happens first over here by seeing our connection. Also, seeing our connection to things is very beautiful. Buddhist teaching, I recognize, we've spent a year talking about a few pages, and it can sometimes feel like heavy philosophy that you might at times scratch your head and wonder, how is this relevant to what I did yesterday or what I'm facing in my life at this moment? How is it relevant to the news story I heard this afternoon that disturbed me? I think this is where we get to that concept more intently. In my opinion, it's easier to talk about that with some background. And the awakening of faith is going to constantly connect practice to all of this theoretical background. So you don't have to memorize it. You need to know it's here so that when we refer to it, it's not the first time you've heard it. It's not a puzzle. Over time, it's something you can start to integrate. But is as terse or dense as this may seem on one level, it's actually a great gift because this has synthesized thousands and thousands of pages of Buddhist philosophy into something that you can put in your back pocket. So now it's trying to connect that to practice. So here is where it's saying this whole concept of the Dharma Dhatu, of the Dharma realm, of understanding the body of the Buddha as not only the teaching, but the application or samadhi, this meditation, you understand or see the body of the Buddha as the world around you and the interconnectivity of sentient beings, right? You don't see it as just a statue. You see it as something in front of you. You see it when you go out into the world. So this is hinted at quite a bit in Buddhist practice. It is hinted at in the use of the incense. You know the incense is burning in the temple, but you smell it in the courtyard, down the street, and you recognize that permeation is carrying, right? There's a connectedness. You recognize it. I'll never forget when I was in Japan. We were drinking coffee in the temple after morning service, which was kind of a treat, only because we had guests from Germany, I believe. And so the people in the kitchen thought it would be nice to serve them coffee. So I was rather excited because I hadn't had coffee in several months. I was like, oh, I need to have coffee because we had guests. So I was there to talk with them because their English was much better than their Japanese. So they wanted to chat, and we sat there drinking coffee, and the abbot of the temple made this comment that something along the lines of the steam coming from our coffee cup, perfectly permeates out into the garden, and the mist in the garden at some point cannot be differentiated from the steam in the cup. And there was something about the moment, as you hold the cup, and of course inside the temple there's no heat, so there's quite a bit of steam coming off this hot coffee. And going out into the garden, this December morning with this heavy dew, the sunlight's just beginning to hit things. You can see the mist coming up, and you recognize in an instant this interconnectedness, whereas most of the time we're sort of stumbling around, looking at things very separate. I'm over here behind the glass, the garden's out there, I'm drinking the coffee, I want the coffee, the coffee's delicious, and we don't think of this connection. So this samadhi, realizing this connection, is one of the basics. The other, if you think about the awakening of faith, talks about the one mind with two aspects, and this is another way of presenting it. Part of what you're trying ultimately, right? Maybe don't worry about it so much tonight, but ultimately, part of the practice is to recognize this mind is not separate from everything that is going on around you. Is to see it not only as a philosophical concept in a book, but something that you experience in a meditative state. So that's kind of the key point. This is important because when we do Asukkan this evening, we're going to talk about this concept of the Dharma Dhatu. And last time I left it out because I wanted to touch on it a little bit more and point out to you where it is in the text. And then tonight when we talk about it, you'll have a little bit of like, oh, okay, here's the practice. Here's the theory about the practice. Here's the rest of the text that's talking about how it's all connected to the Buddhist teaching. So in many ways, this teaching is simple. In other ways, it's quite complex. I think, in fact, the teaching is simple, but we are very complex. So it has to be laid out for us in a way that we can approach from wherever we find ourselves in our world of complexity. The teaching is always going to be relevant. So whether you're in the small room with me and the guests from Germany drinking the coffee, or you're on the other side of the garden, sweeping the leaves, we're connected. But at the moment, you might find your mind fixated only on one thing and not being aware of the broader picture. So, okay. continue on in the text, so still on page 75, or if you have the printed version, page 97. If there is a man who lacks the capacity for goodness, he will be confused by the evil tempter, by heretics, and by demons. Sometimes these beings will appear in dreadful forms while he is sitting in meditation, and at other times they will manifest themselves in the shape of handsome men and women. So I will pause there. So this is the Awakening of Faith's warning and recognition that meditation may trigger hallucination or bad dreams, or you may see difficult visions during your meditation practice. And it's stated here as if a person lacks the capacity for goodness. I think that is true, but it's also true in reference to past experience, past actions for us. Things may come up in meditation. So when I was younger, much younger, I lived in China, and I would actually hear a lot of teachers, Buddhist and Taoist, say back then that they would prefer not to teach meditation because in their opinion, most people ended up having trouble. And a lot of the trouble they referred to was stuff would come up, right, for people. So they would have very disturbing visions in their meditation. So they were hesitant to take people down that road. So this is the part of the popularity of mindfulness that is not discussed in popular literature. So the other night I was speaking with someone and this is exactly what they were talking about. They were trying to practice meditation. They had a strong affinity for Buddhist practice. It was a Zoom call. So during the Zoom call, they said, look, I have all these pictures of the Buddha, and I really love Buddhism, but they were having a tremendous difficulty with emotional upheaval. And in many ways, I think it was for this reason. There was not a good grounding in the practice or background in how to orient themselves and their behavior before they were doing meditation. So this is the reason we don't want to view meditation as an escape or, I went and did all these things that were disturbing, so now let me go meditate and try to forget about them. That's not the perspective. The Awakening of Faith very clearly will tell you here, all of that's going to come up and disturb you during meditation. So on the one hand, it is a warning. The other hand, it is clear instructions. If this is happening, this is why. So this is one of the main reasons traditionally why meditation is not the first practice. It's also not the primary practice. It is an additional practice. It is part of a basket of practices that go together. So doing meditation alone without practicing goodness, without practicing morality, is going to lead to, what does it say here? You will be confused by the evil tempter, right, very clearly. So all kinds of things will come up. So what kind of things will come up? I will give you examples of things that have come up for people, both while I was teaching and at teachings that I've attended. So the first one that I remember, most clearly I've encountered people, will just begin sobbing uncontrollably in meditation. So a lot of emotions come up. And this can be true, both good and bad. Some people feel a tremendous emotional release. Something comes up, they see it from a different perspective, and they there's a relief that manifests as tears, and that can be healing. Other people see things differently and recognize tremendous culpability, guilt, because they've been able to see something from the perspective of another, so that can come up. I recall one gentleman, this was quite a while ago in California. We were doing meditation, and he began to kind of moan and sigh, and I wasn't sure if he was uncomfortable or. So I looked over and he was sweating and he turned red. And I thought, oh, maybe he had really spicy food or he's having an allergy. And as soon as the sensei said, "Does anyone have any questions?" He was like, he said all he could think about was sex, and he was totally aroused and overcome to the point of, he looked like he had just gotten out of the shower. He was like sweating so much. So this is clearly stated in the text. Sometimes these beings will appear in dreadful forms. At other times they will manifest in the shape of handsome men and women. So our minds may pull us so far into one extreme or the other. Some people see demons. Some people see handsome men and women, to the point that it's tremendously distracting. And he wasn't able to get this out of his mind. I found it was the first time I had heard something like that. So I kind of listened very intrigued, but he was, genuinely asking for help about that situation. That was his main hurdle he could not overcome. And as a result of, talking, it was a result of him, having been very, very active when he was younger, so that all of that imagery came back. So, what are the starting points for practice? What have we talked about, right? Repentance, looking into goodness, looking into morality, looking into how we should conduct ourselves. And when we say why, it's partially, to be better people, yes, but also because very clearly it will come up and severely disturb your meditation. So, as a very practical sense, if you're familiar with the life story of the Buddha, this was the last, major hurdle the Buddha underwent. And in many books that discuss the Buddha's life, there are illustrations, and you'll see, the daughters of Mara. And Mara is the great tempter. And what was he tempting the Buddha with? There's his daughters and women dancing with their saris and trying to pull him out of the meditation and being very, very sensuous, and they're dancing in front of him. So all of these things come up as disturbances. So how do you quell those disturbances? How do you address that aspect of the mind? So all of the practices that precede this section for a reason, right? We need to understand the framework. We need to do these other practices before we're ready to do meditation. Otherwise, we'll be disturbed, right? Very clear what kind of disturbances. There's another, I think, condition or potential here. Right, they will be confused by the evil tempter, by heretics, and by demons. How do we know what we're seeing is a projection of the mind or something real? When should we be concerned? So this is a question I get often, right? Someone may have very disturbing dreams as part of their spiritual practice. And when should they be concerned about the content of the dream? Or when should they say that's clearly a manifestation of an emotional state, right? So when is it strictly psychological, or when should someone be concerned? I will say this is why, what makes Buddhism unique? Buddhism is unique because of all the world religions. Buddhism is the one where the founder of the religion also created the clergy and the rules for them and said they're important. Every other religion, clerical structures and the structure of the religion for most parts grew up later, and they made rules for things. During the Buddha's time, he said, there will be monks and nuns, and I've ordained them, and this is what you should do. This is the rule. And then he laid out, right? I was teaching you the Pali, Buddham Saranam Gacchami, right? I take refuge in the Buddha, I take refuge in the Dharma, I take refuge in the Sangha. So one of the reasons why there is a Sangha, right? Why is there a professional class of practitioners is to provide a resource for people when they encounter these obstacles, right? So the Buddha didn't say, okay, go try your best. He had people with him who practiced right next to him for 40 plus years and was able to say, you make these adjustments, make this adjustment, make that adjustment. The same is true for us, right? So, what happens when you encounter that? You should ask someone with the proper experience. So one thing I find intriguing in our country, especially in the United States, we have Reddit, and there's Buddhist threads on Reddit, and people will ask all sorts of questions on Reddit regarding Buddhist practice, and it's always intriguing to me why they don't go to the temple or wherever they learn the meditation practice from to ask the question. So this is a basic structure within the Buddhist teaching. You should be asking. So a lot of monastic universities, monastic training centers have separate training courses for meditators and meditation teachers, and they are quite long. And then those are the people certified to teach meditation practice, and that's who people go to for these questions. These are legitimate concerns. One of the other situations advice I would give is you need to consider your condition. We are, I think, more than ever, more aware of psychological disturbances, and many people are very aware of their own diagnoses for these things, and they may have a label for that diagnosis or medication for that diagnosis, and that has to be considered with regard to meditation practice. So if you know that you're coming to this practice and you have been told by a professional that you have depression or ADHD or an eating disorder, or you name it, that is going to come up in meditation. I remember years ago, I knew a young woman who had an eating disorder, and she told me, I'm not professional on this, so I will just relate the story. She told me that people with eating disorders have typical recurring dreams, and that one of those dreams may be that they lose their teeth or all their hair falls out, and so for them that was a recurring dream. So when they started to meditate, guess what happened in their meditation? The first thing they did was kind of almost like horrific hallucinations that were worse than those dreams. So addressing those external concerns first, I think, would be very beneficial before trying a serious meditation practice. It may be counterproductive to do meditation practice where you're trying to tame the mind when there is a known obstacle already. So that obstacle should be worked on. The same is true for, basic behavior. That's why the Awakening of Faith says we need to be aware of our behavior. If you like to murder people and then you try to sit down and meditate and then you go, Sensei, I keep seeing all the faces of the people I kill. Yes, that is true, because the Awakening of Faith says you should work on goodness first. So it's not a value judgment of one thing is better than another thing, or one thing is a bigger hurdle than another thing. Anything can be a hurdle, right? Anything can be a hurdle. We need to just be very aware and honest about that hurdle. And if we find that coming up, then we need to go back and work on it. So this is why there's devotional practice within Buddhism. This is why there is chanting, recitation, bowing. This is why there is pilgrimage. All these other practices are working on us. Then it's easier for us to do meditation. It's not that meditation is the end-all, be-all practice. Right? Many, I can safely say, many monastics do not practice sitting meditation. Right? So if you go to Asia, what do they practice? They practice reciting the Buddha's name. They practice reciting the mantra over and over and over again. That is meditative, but to sit in silence is, in many ways, you're putting up the movie screen and you're letting your mind be the projector, but you have to be aware, are you in control of the projector? Or is it just randomly projecting things? So taming the mind is really important. What happens if these things come up? Right? If you have those obstacles come up, what should you do? Right? You should stop meditating and practice something else and then come back to the practice. So you don't just stay there and go, I'm just going to hallucinate and have this, horrible experience forever and ever and power through it. The Awakening of Faith does give instructions, right? So if you keep reading, so in such a case, he should meditate on the principle of mind only, and then those objects will vanish and will not trouble him any longer. What is the principle of mind only? Hint, it is covered earlier in the text, right? But if your meditation and your insight into the Buddha's teaching is such that you are able, in the midst of, whatever it is that's coming up before you, to say, I understand this is simply a projection of my mind, and that alone is able to clear that hallucination, then there's no problem, right? Then you're able to continue. If that is not where your meditation practice is, then you need to go back. And this is honest. When I first started to meditate, I was a teenager, and I would sit, every day, 45 minutes, hour and a half, and it was just nothing. It was all this stuff happened at school, and I've got to do my homework, and maybe I should stop doing this because I got homework to do, and I got to study for this exam. This exam's coming up. I wonder if so-and-so has the notes for my exam. I don't want even my notes though, because then they don't, and then I have a timer ding. Oh, wasted my time. I should have been reciting the Buddha's name, but of course I didn't have that instruction at the time. So I had years and years and years of fruitless. Well, I won't say totally fruitless. It helped me sit. I can sit, half lotus, full lotus for a long time. So that was good. But I was not getting anywhere with my meditation practice. It was not doing what it was supposed to do. So we need to be aware of, are we doing the right thing? So the text goes on. So sometimes they may appear as the images of heavenly beings or bodhisattvas, and assume also the figure of the Tathagata or the Buddha, furnished with all the major and minor marks. So they may expound the spells or preach charity, the precepts, patience, zeal, meditation, and wisdom. Or they may discourse on how the true nirvana is the state of universal emptiness, of the non-existence of characteristics, vows, hatreds, affliction, causes and effects, and of the absolute nothingness. This is another good example. If you have that experience, how do you distinguish if that is an actual fruitful experience or not? Partially it's going to be, are you familiar with the teaching, right? Did what you experienced accord with what you read in the sutra? Oh, I had a vision of Fudo. I had a vision of Kano. I had a vision of Manjushri. Okay. Did what you see match the sutra? If not, then maybe we need to check, right, the mind. If it does, then good, right? Your own study of the sutras is manifesting in your meditation or in your dream. That's good. So this is all part of sorting out. It is not, what is the term I heard a few years ago? It is not to be just blissed out, as someone here in Portland told me once. Right? Well, I practice meditation just so I can bliss out. I'm not saying being blissed out is bad, but it's not in here as the goal of your meditation is to be blissed out. You may feel bliss as a result of seeing your connection with all other sentient beings, but it is not a escape. It is not a euphoria for the sake of euphoria. It's something different. So let's see. They may also teach him the knowledge of his own past and future states of existence, the method of reading other men's minds, and perfect mastery of speech, causing him to be covetous and attached to worldly fame and profit. Or they may cause him to be frequently moved to joy and anger, and thus have unsteadiness of character, being at times very kind-hearted, very drowsy, very ill, lazy-minded, or at times being suddenly zealous, and then afterwards lapsing into negligence, or developing a lack of faith, a great deal of doubt, and a great deal of anxiety, or abandoning his fundamental excellent practices towards religious perfection and devoting himself to miscellaneous religious acts. Do you notice something interesting about this list? It goes back and forth. Right? Some part you go, oh, that sounds good, right? I want that. And then it goes, oh, that's not so good. You notice it doesn't seem to make a distinction. All these things may come up in meditation. There's very few things in this list I have not heard people say they experienced. So what do you think about that? So this continues. Some of them are very interesting. Sometimes they may cause him to remain in samadhi for 1, 2, 3, up to 7 days. Right? You're like, oh, I'm just going to do 40 minutes. And you're like, oh, it's been a week. Right? No food, drink. He didn't move. That could happen. Feeling comfort in his body or joy in his mind, being neither hungry nor thirsty, or taking of natural, fragrant, delicious food and drink, which induce him to increase his attachment to them. Oh, there, it finally gets to it. So one of the dangers of, what could we say, the blissed out goal of meditation practice is then you become attached to the feeling of being blissed out. So instead of meditating to develop wisdom and compassion, you're meditating, you're chasing the bliss train. So this is one of the dangers. Instead of meditating, right, to recognize your connection to all sentient beings as a pathway to compassion, you are only interested in your past life or gaining psychic powers, as it says here. So you're chasing that as a goal. There are many books written on just that goal alone. Right? That is not the purpose of Buddhist meditation. So this is these are the dangers. These are all the pitfalls laid before you. So the Awakening of Faith is very clear about the pitfalls. Many books claiming to be about Buddhist meditation champion these states or these reasons and purposes. It's very clear that that's not the purpose. Now, if you have the experience, that's fine. The danger is you start just chasing that. oh, Tuesday I was meditating and I retrieved the past life memory. So Wednesday I'm going to try to do it again. That's not the right perspective. Oh, I retrieved the memory. Great. Move on. Right? If it happens again, that's okay. If it doesn't, that's okay. But you're not attached to the outcome. That's the key. So, right, just as it says in the text, I envisioned, I was having this wonderful meal, the bodhisattva. So now when I come out, I want that flavor again. So I run around town trying to go to all the best restaurants. So that is the danger. The attachment is the danger. Any questions about that part? Otherwise, I will inadvertently talk all night just about that section. No questions? It's pretty clear. The reason I spent time on it is some texts on meditation will just say, if these things come up, ignore it. I think it's beneficial that the Awakening of Faith actually lists out the particulars so that we aren't confused about what to look for, what not to look for, what we have or haven't experienced. So these are not value judgments, right? They are not, this one's good, that one's bad. So all of these things may happen. Just take care that you're not coming back to meditation, chasing them. That's not the goal. Right? So if you have the pleasant experience, you may just say, oh, that's good. But if you have the negative experience, it may be very scary. So the Awakening of Faith is also preparing us that we may have that experience. So as much as we shouldn't come back to meditation practice chasing an experience, we shouldn't avoid meditation practice because we're trying to not have that experience. The text does go on and, tell you more about that state, but we'll pause there and actually do the Asokokan meditation again with a little bit more detail so we can put some of this information into practice. But let me know if you have any questions about this section before we go. No question, everyone's already blissfully meditating and experiencing only the positive benefits. That's good. Okay. Eventually, it may help to have a camera operator. So because I don't have a camera operator, I usually have to do these things stationary. So how do we start our meditation practice? So generally speaking, it will depend on where you're doing your practice and how much space you have at home and all these different things. So where should you do your practice? If you have a dedicated space, so what do I mean by that? If you have a focus for meditation at home, if you have a Butsudan, if you have an image of the Buddha, one of the mandalas, something, you can use that as the focal point. So you should, before you do your meditation practice, clean that space. You may offer tea or fruit before the image of the Buddha or before the image of Kobudashi, whatever it is that you have at home for your practice. If you are in the temple, then That's usually been done on behalf of the group, but you may be offering incense before the service. So there's usually some sort of offering. So you'd be, offering incense. That's, again, perfuming the Dharma Dhatu, right? The scent of the teaching is going out, being offered to everyone. So that would be first. So there's some appreciation for the teaching that's being recognized before you do your practice. As I said before, wear comfortable clothing. So one of the benefits of robes is they're, very good for meditation, and nothing's is binding or itchy or too tight or something like this. So you want to wear clothing that's conducive to your practice. It is very common to either get too hot during meditation or too cold, or your body temperature may fluctuate. So some people find that using a shawl or light blanket over the shoulders during meditation can be beneficial. Then if you get hot, you can take it off. Or sometimes it's just wrapped around the lap. So just be aware that may be helpful. So again, you don't need to buy anything special. You can use a beach blanket, or beach towel, wrap that around your legs if you have it. Something very, whatever you have it at hand is fine. So those are some of the basics. Again, if you have a meditation cushion, you can use that. If not, I recommend, a heavy quilt or wool blanket and using that to sit on. Or if you're not comfortable sitting on the floor or unable to, I know a lot of people have, knee or joint trouble, so sitting in a chair would be good. I recommend, folding chair or dining room chair, and then putting a cushion on that or a blanket, but sitting towards the edge of the chair, so you don't want to lean back. So this is me leaning against the wall. You don't want to lean against the wall. You want to sit upright. You don't want to lean against the back of the chair. You want to try to sit upright. If you have significant back trouble or there's a medical problem, then please take care of your body. So these are general rules. The whole point is you don't want to fall asleep during meditation. So you want to be awake, but alert, but relaxed. So, it's not in the Awakening of Faith or somewhere else in the sutras, do not use some back support, because that is, that angers the Buddha. That's not the reason. You just don't want to be too relaxed where there's, the body isn't engaged, where you then end up falling asleep. So that's the first step. When you come in to the hall, if you're doing it as a group, so after COVID, when we can be together again, you would usually bow 3 times. Depending on the practice space, the officiant may do the bow on behalf of everyone. So usually when we're practicing at the temple, I would do the 3 prostrations at the beginning. If I do that now, I'll be off camera. So we would just bow 3 times. So tonight we'll do it from the waist. And then usually also accompanied by the mantra for veneration. So tonight we'll just bow 3 times. And then we recite the awakening of the mind of enlightenment. So in reverence of faith, I seek the unsurpassed awakening. May I, together with others, realize the truth of the Buddha, cross over the sea of birth and death, and reach the shore of liberation. And so that sentiment, that idea is encapsulated in the mantra, Om Bodhicitta Bodhadayami, Om Bodhicitta Bodhadayami, Om Bodhicitta Bodhadayami. So I awaken the mind of enlightenment. So you're encapsulating that idea through the mantra. Then reciting the Samaya vow, the Samaya Kai. I, child of the universal Buddha, Dainichi Nyorai, pledge my life to the Buddha's way of life, which he laid down for us to walk. I resolve to follow his example and labor earnestly for the welfare of all mankind. Om Sammaya Satoban, Om Sammaya Satoban, Om Sammaya Sato Bhan. Okay. So then you'd start the meditation. So you want to adjust the body so that you're comfortable. So usually you're going to bend forward and back, side to side. I even recommend, rolling the shoulders. So you want to just consciously move the body so that you can relax. You may hold unconscious tension, right? So as you roll the shoulders, you realize, oh, my shoulders are up here. I need to relax. So you relax. Adjusting the breath. So placing the hands in the lap, the meditation mudra, thumbs touching. First, you close your eyes. Slowly take a nice deep inhale in through your nose. And at the very beginning, you'll be exhaling out through the mouth. Again, inhale in through your nose. Imagine breaths going all the way into your lower abdomen. Exhaling out through the mouth. So you're inhaling, visualize nice pure air from nature going all throughout the body, and you're exhaling out any negative thoughts. Visualize you're inhaling pure air from nature, almost like a white mist. And you're exhaling out. So eventually that pure white mist coming in from nature is also being exhaled out through the body. So you're actually exhaling the same pure white mist. So you're inhaling the air from nature, coming in through the entire chest, through your body. Your body is filled with this pure air. As you exhale, all impurities and negative thoughts, any impurities in your body come out and float away. Inhaling again in pure air from the nature. Exhaling out any impurities, negativity. So just do that for a little while, just get used to that idea. So inhaling, exhaling. Little by little, you just want the inhale and the exhale to be in the nose and out through your nose. Inhaling that pure air, feel it, visualize it permeating your body. And exhale out through the nose. That'll be your first step. When we do this meditation as a group, then whomever's leading it may choose the amount of time for that initial cleansing breathing. When you do it at home on your own, it will depend on your condition. So if it's been a very stressful day, you may spend more time. If you have more negative thoughts or energy, you want to get to the point where you feel like you've breathed all of that out. So just take your time. Be kind to yourself. Be gentle. Don't rush any portion. The next step will be practicing the ah vocalization. So I want to talk about the ah vocalization a little bit more. So if you are practicing at home, you can just listen to this part before we do the practice, but continue to breathe and visualize that pure air from nature coming in your body. You're exhaling out any impurities or negativity. When we start the vocalization, you're going to chant the syllable ah, and you really want to try to feel the sound in your body reverberating through, feel the vibrations through the entire body. So eventually, it does take some practice. You want to try to not only have the sound or the voice in the throat, but try to feel the ah, right, through the entire body. You would visualize the sound, right? You're going to visualize the sound of the voiced ah going out from you 3 feet, 9 feet, 12 feet, right? You visualize like the sound is moving out from your body. And that your breath comes out with the sound and continues on past the point where you can hear it. So there's going to be the voiced ah and the voiceless ah. So you can hear, what's the farthest you hear your voice reflected back from you? The other side of the room, the other side of a space like a gymnasium. And then if your voice goes out, you no longer hear it, but you visualize that the ah continues out, right, beyond your hearing. And this voiceless ah is going to reach out and become the spiritual energy of Mahavairochana, of Dainichi Nyorai. So your ah goes out into the world, goes out into nature. And as you inhale that same spiritual energy that you put out, you're inhaling back into your body, right? As the unvoiced ah, the silent ah. And then your body is going to give energy back out as the voiced ah. So our voices can only reach so far. So it will go out as a visualization and then down into the earth. And that spiritual energy will rise up from the earth as we inhale. So the ah is coming back, fills the body, and then we're giving voice to that principle, right? That ah principle. And that ah, of course, is emptiness, sunyata. Right? The ah syllable that underlies the teaching of Dainichi Nyorai. So you're experiencing it, visualizing it at the same time. This is the same concept that's discussed in the Awakening of Faith as the samadhi of the Dharma Dhatu, right? Not seeing a distinction between yourself and the universe, not seeing a distinction between yourself and other sentient beings. So tonight we're online, so we're all over the world, but our voiceless ah is going to be reaching out to one another. If we were all together in the temple, in the hall, then we would hear each other's voices. So your neighbor's ah would be assisting your meditation. Their vibration becomes part of your body. Your breath goes out. Right? The oxygen in the hall is shared. That energy is shared. So for this evening, you're only going to hear me, but try to get your ah, not just ah, but so you can feel it in the body. So I'm going to keep track of the number of times. So when you hear me start with your next natural exhale. So if you're in the middle of your inhale, when I start ah, when you're ready to exhale, just begin. And when you hear me stop, just finish your last, and then go back to your breathing. Inhale, exhale. But remember, you're still bringing into your body the unvoiced from the spiritual world. You put that energy out, and you're recognizing it's returning to you. So, starting again, just visualizing pure energy from nature, almost like a white mist coming into the body. Exhaling out any negativity, any thoughts that have been troubling you. Just like in the beginning of the meditation, nice deep breath in through your nose, out through your mouth. And take a nice deep breath in through the nose, out to the mouth. Deep breath in and out. If you're sitting cross-legged, you might want to uncross, or shift the legs. If you're sitting in a chair, this would be the time to stretch your legs out, sit back in the chair. You want to readjust the body so you slowly begin to feel your circulation come back to normal. The key thing is don't stand up right away. Your blood pressure may change because your breathing has changed. It's very common we may not feel a foot or ankle has gone to sleep, so be very careful coming out. Make sure you can move everything. Nothing's at a difficult angle. I have seen people fall down, stand up for meditation and get lightheaded, so take your time coming out for meditation. At the end, put our hands together and recite the empowerment of the three powers. So through my meritorious power, through the consecrating power of the Buddha and the power of all surroundings, I would abide in the universal offering. And then usually reciting Kobudaishi's mantra, the Gohogo. Namo Daishi Heinjo Kongo. Namo Daishi Heinjo Kongo. Namo Daishi Heinjo Kongo. Just like in the beginning, before you get up, you bow 3 times. So tonight we'll do it from the waist. Any questions? We'll continue to practice more. So I want to go over more details of the Asokan practice as we go through this section on meditation practice. I think it's helpful to not just read it as a scholarly work, but to connect it with our actual practice. Any questions? Oh, there's one in chat. Oh yes, so Jeremy mentioned, yes, Imanaka Sensei is also doing meditation online. So in the back of the hall, they have a relatively new meditation dojo. So he's been doing the online meditation practice. So if you have a chance to attend Imanaka Sensei's practice, I recommend it. I would also note Imanaka Sensei was an instructor at the seminary on Koyasan for quite a while, so I'm sure he has some good pointers and different perspective also on practice. So it's good to, what we're in the era now where I think, largely because of COVID, you get a chance to see different, there's more Shingon teaching online now than ever before, so it's a good opportunity. So somebody asked, how do you move the fingers on the mala? So usually, I don't know how, let's see if this comes out. So it may be hard to tell, but I have very large hands. So I generally get a larger bead because smaller beads feel like toys in my hand. So if, depending on the size you have, here, this is probably better. You don't look at the bead right in front of my face. Depending on the size of bead you have, you would just count over the hand. So one to the next. And then the Shingon style has these smaller beads. So those are to help you count 7. You can see that, 7, without having to look down at them. So a lot of services we do, we may count 7 mantras and then hit the bell. So that way you don't have to consciously say, Namadaishi Angel Kongo 1, Namadaishi Angel Kongo 2, Namadaishi Angel Kongo 3. You can count and just by feel know. So it's helpful, in my opinion, if you have, I'll do it this way. It's kind of hard for the camera to, so you see the small blue one? If it's significantly smaller, then you can feel it. But if the beads are all the same size, it can be difficult to feel. So if you buy one online, they will often tell you the bead size in millimeters. So I would recommend before you buy one, compare to someone else, or get a ruler out, get a bean or something, and try to figure out the size. So usually I try to go for a larger one because otherwise I feel like I'm doing this tiny little, it's not very useful. So it is, it should be useful. So you want to make sure you can actually feel the difference between the actual beads. So that's fine. Sorry, I'm looking to make sure I didn't miss any other questions. Are there any others? So when we were doing the I just count 21 times. So again, there's a bead at the 21 mark. So I would just count. And then when I get to 21, that's when we stop, and then just go back to the breathing. So I can do that without counting. So if I'm sitting here, I reached that point, so that's when I stop. So that way you're not breaking your concentration. You can just do it by feel. This style is very useful. Some people also hold it this way. That's fine too. Or just one hand. This is where I need camera operator. I realize it's off screen, so sorry. Yeah, I agree with Warren. If you have larger ones, it's helpful. So I recently located my first one that I had for 27 years. Yeah. And I noticed the beads are much smaller. So that it is helpful to have a larger one. So. I know sometimes price can be an issue, but they do last forever. So you can get them restrung if the string wears out. So tiny, tiny one that you can't actually feel. You don't have to buy crystal. These are seeds. You don't have to buy expensive material. The tradition is wood, Bodhi seeds, which these are, lotus seeds, or plain material. So there's a strong marketing push to have coral or something that's very, very expensive. You don't need that. You just plain material. And yes, yeah, the gemstone ones are usually not accurate. If you're going to buy a more expensive, gemstone, I really recommend getting it in person. So, for example, this one I got in Japan. So you want to know what you're getting. So be careful buying online. If you're buying online, I would recommend just wood or the lotus seed or something that's general. So don't get ripped off. Oh, so someone asked, is it appropriate or inappropriate to restring your own? You can completely restring your own. So the Shingon style, sometimes people need the tassel remade. So there are shops on Koyasan that will restring these. Most of the time, this part lasts. It's just the string in the middle that breaks. So it's totally okay to restring your own. It can be difficult. For example, this dial has the string comes in and then goes out one bead. So if you go to a bead shop, they will sell, it's not a needle, but it's a flexible tool that will pull the string through. So that can be helpful. But some, you can just tie it. So it was very common, for example, when I was in Hawaii, people would just retie their own because they didn't have the ability to go back to Japan to get it restrung. So that's totally okay. If it breaks, you just try to find all the beads and then you can restring. Did I miss any? Hope I didn't miss any questions. I was trying to follow. I need a bigger, chat monitor. So you guys are way down here.
I think
you see the top of my head when I'm reading.
Sensei, I think you might have inadvertently answered it, but somebody asked if they could make their own, and you sort of answered that by saying you can get supplies.
I think so, yeah. I made one myself. There are temples that do make their own. First and foremost, this is a tool. It's just for counting. So that's number one. So of course, in the old days, people made their own. In fact, if you go on the Shikoku pilgrimage, you'll go to different places along the way where Kobodaishi stayed, and he didn't have statuary or anything, so he just carved the stone, to a rough, version of the Buddha. There's even one cave where he carved a desk. It's very rough. It's just a rock. You just need someplace to put the book. So, if you want to make your own, I think that's good. It's actually probably easier because many of this style can be hundreds of dollars. So, there's no reason to go bankrupt just because you need to count. So, a bead store. What the other benefit there may be, then you can touch the size of bead to make sure it's the right size that fits your hand. So I actually had a friend who was going to make one out of lapis. So we went to the bead store together. She was very good at making beads. And I finally found, the right size. So we actually got there. So at least for me, I can, I should be better at basketball since I can just hold the basketball. most of the ones that I find are really tiny, so it's very hard to count. So I prefer a little bit larger size. So many people find this too big. I have one that's even larger. You know, there's only a few people who find that comfortable. So it's really, if you're sitting there and you're like, I can't feel, you move your hand and you go across 3 feet, it's frustrating. So, you know, for many people, this is one of the more personal tools. So, you know, something that's comfortable is useful. But you don't, there is no need to go on eBay and buy the $3,000 one. I've seen some that are $40,000, $50,000. I saw one that was all gold, all silver. I even saw one that was diamond. I don't know why you would ever want to spend that kind of money, but I guess perhaps if you, I don't know, are the CEO of Panasonic and you're going to the wedding of one of the princesses of Japan and you want to give something very expensive, that's, I don't know. I don't know why they have it, but there's no reason, right? This is just low to seed, very simple. Oh, so a question on Reiki. Yes, that is actually a traditional common connection. That's a long conversation. Short answer, I did a seminar at a Reiki center in Ohio years ago. The original Reiki practitioners, when Reiki was first brought to the United States, which was in Japan, in Hawaii, excuse me, they begin and end their Reiki practice with Shingon mantras. So there is a background connection. Where Reiki was developed in Kyoto, I believe, is a Shingon temple. So the founder of Reiki, when he had his kind of revelation, was a Shingon temple. So there is a somewhat of a connection between the two. We can have a longer conversation sometime if people are interested. That's true. Okay, I think I got.
There's one more question. Sorry. It looks like Carlin asked if you know many places where to get, what did she say? Are there resources you can recommend to look at all of the qualities and elements of malas?
Oh, yes. There's a lot of different teachings on the mala. How about this? One time I'll go over the different aspects. So there should be 108 beads. The Shingon style is different from other styles, school styles. So this style was brought from China by Kobodaishi, in the 700s. So most other schools don't use this style, but we have tassels at both ends. They're counters. So each time you go around, you could then count 108, 100, 200, 300, 400. So you can count up to 10,800 on this style. And then there are other meditation methods that use a different style. So you can count the number of mantras you do for that particular meditation. But this is the most common one. And then there are general recommendations on how to use it and store it and that kind of thing. But that might be a good practice class. So we can put that on the list of future classes. And then some places you'll see they give the meaning of each bead. So traditionally, in general, though, there is a teaching that there are 108 obstacles to enlightenment. And so that's why there's 108 beads, so you're overcoming each obstacle with each mantra. So in general, that is sufficient. You don't have to know. I don't know anyone who actually memorized all of that, but there's sometimes, they're all written out. So. Okay. So we will dedicate merit. So if there's anything in particular that you'd like to dedicate merit to, I'm going to continue to dedicate our practice to the nation and the world overcoming this pandemic, and that we can get people vaccinated quickly. And I think this is one of the few times where all of us are experiencing the same thing. All of our communities worldwide, no matter where we are, we're all connected by this situation. So we'll dedicate merit to all of those affected by the COVID-19 virus, either directly through their health, or indirectly as family and friends, or as all of us are addressing the situation by wearing masks and staying distant, and just recognizing those effects. So. May whatever merit we've accumulated be extended universally to all sentient beings, so that they, together with us, may equally realize. Thank you, everyone, for joining us this evening. As you can tell, Asokukan is not the type of meditation we all want to do packed into a hall right now in the middle of a pandemic. So please practice responsibly, socially distant, and we will continue to practice together online. And I look forward to sometime next year when we can practice together in person, and welcome all of you back to the temple, or welcome you to a visit if you're not locally in the Portland or Oregon area. So have a good evening, stay safe, stay well. I look forward to seeing you all next week and at all of our other events. So have a good evening. Good night.